Bloomhouse, you're back in my good graces. For now. What's up? And welcome to my review of Imaginary, the latest in Blumhouse production, a film I was very hesitant on watching, on even giving a try at first, for reasons I'll get into here in a minute. But for now, as always, I want to thank you very much for clicking here. I really do appreciate it. So in the film, you basically have this woman who has this family, this step family, who decides to uproot them and go back to her own childhood home, only to find out that her own imaginary friend when she was little is very much real and is very mad that he abandoned her. There's these two little girls, a teenage daughter and a younger sister. And he uses that younger sister to try to get back to this woman. And it's basically a supernatural, as all of Blumhouse movies usually are, unless it's Halloween. It's basically a supernatural horror type movie. And the thing about Blumhouse is they really make their movies on the smart. Like, for really cheap and real practical. And I gotta give them props. They're that company that it's kind of a hit and miss with me. Ever since Halloween Ends, oh God, don't even get me started on that one. Okay, moving on. Ever since that one, it's just been maybe more miss than hit, but still some hits in there every now and then, like this one. But in the end, this makes my second time watching it, and that kind of ought to tell you something. Mainly because the reason why I watched it the second time is because I was trying to get this out. The first time I watched it with my cousin, my family was visiting. I couldn't really do that much on here at that time. So this is for you guys. So that's why it's so late. I gotta be honest, I didn't expect to like it as much as I actually did. And referring back to my little comment earlier, the reason why I was so hesitant on watching this is because Night Swim, that left such a bad taste in my mouth that I just couldn't get in. I wasn't at that time excited for any more Blumhouse movies that was to be announced. I heard of this one very shortly after that one was released, and when I watched the trailers, I was like, no, Night Swim is still fresh. It's too soon. Too soon. Too soon. But then I got around to actually watching it. I got enough courage to watch it, and not bad. Blumhouse, you kind of redeemed yourself. Just a little. So that being said, let's start off with the positives for Imaginary. I do gotta say, I like the premise. I like the concept that this movie brought out. Just the fact that these imaginary entities is what they actually are, these supernatural realm entities, but to kids, they're actually imaginary friends, just goes to the dark side. I really do find that interesting. I like the fact that it shows the innocence of a child, the all-out imagination that kids can actually drum up, and it really shows it here, but in a dark way, but through no fault of the kid's own, in this case the little girl. These imaginary friends just are corrupt, and something happened that made them kind of evil. And that was an interesting concept. I found out what this movie was about. I knew what the premise was. I always found that interesting. I guess that's what kind of shoved me a little bit after that god-awful Night Swim. I think that's kind of what shoved me a little bit towards this, taking the time and effort to actually go and pay in to watch it. I really did like that concept. I thought the story played out well here. And just the fact that this little girl was getting taunted, like at first, she's a kid. She's got that innocence about her. And then she finds out that not everything is what it is as it seems. So as the movie progresses, she finds out very quick that you're not dealing with a childhood imaginary friend. She is, but a very bad one, or bad ones. I really did think that was a really interesting concept, and I liked what they did with it. I really did. The pacing of this movie, unlike that crappy Night Swim, was much better. I did not see a lot of things coming a mile away, which is what I really truly wanted in a horror movie and a Blumhouse movie. This is a Blumhouse movie that really kind of redeemed itself for me personally, especially after that other film. I thought it was tense enough. And they did this gimmick, this little twist, which I won't get into, spoiler free here, don't worry. But they did this little gimmick, this little twist that I did not see coming. If it was probably like right in front of me, I still wouldn't have saw it. It kind of reminded me of a Saw-like twist. That's all I'll say. That's all I'll say. And I really did appreciate that. They did that maybe a couple times. The first time, it was more shocking to me, but the second time, it was shocking, but I was like, oh yeah, awesome. Because I was still wordless of that first shock, so if that makes any sense. I really did enjoy the jump scares. It actually made me jump quite a bit. Especially when my cousin and I went and seen this thing the first time. She really enjoyed it, and a couple times she like grabbed my shoulder, and I was like, it's okay, it's okay. But yeah, I really did enjoy that. I like actually jumping, which is something that horror movies, especially supernatural horror movies, if it's not Evil Dead, has not been able to accomplish with me anyway. I always say if it's a supernatural movie and it's not Evil Dead, nah. But for Imaginary, for a very tamed PG, this is a PG-13 rated, it does have some gory scenes, but very tamed, but it's right there. But for a tamed PG-13 type of film, it was really good. Yeah, I know they say that the rating never matters. It's only as good as the story actually tells. But the story was actually pretty good. And therefore, that really matters. So, yeah, in the end, I really did enjoy Imaginary. It was really good. I really did not expect to like it as much as I did. Even the second time around, it was like the first time watching it. Sorta. I really did like the mother in this, DeWanda Wise, which is the first time I've ever seen her. I may have laid eyes on her before, but this is the first time I've actually noticed her. I did like her performance as the mother. There's like that twist that I told you about involving her. What she brought out into this character, I really bought into it. There is a mixed aspect, which I'll get into in a minute here, involving the dialogue. But other than that, I thought that this actress did really well. I really bought her performance to some capacity. There was a lot of moments to where she definitely had her moments in this. She definitely had her, emotional spiral moments to where you're really hooked, you really care and is interested in this character. And they gave her such a really great character arc that I couldn't turn away. And I thought it was really interesting. I really did like what they did with her. And there was certain moments with the little girl where it kind of just made me chuckle. I wouldn't call this a comedy by any stretch. It's a Blumhouse supernatural horror movie. That's what they do. But there was certain moments with the little girl that just kind of made me chuckle. Again, I won't get into it, but it did make me chuckle quite a bit. And that's all I'll say about that. Same with the old woman. She got a couple chuckles out of me as well. Everybody was on their A game in this. I felt like that this was not something that they were just there for a paycheck and just wanting to get it over with. Like, I can't remember everything I said about Night Swim, but I'm pretty sure I probably said that about that too, but whatever. Moving on. Why am I even mentioning that? All right, get back to it. I thought the characters was really good in this, and it's just something in a horror movie that you want, that I wanted anyway. And the way that they, utilize Chauncey, which is the main villain, the main imaginary ghost of this film, I liked what they did with him. It kind of gave me sort of a Creep Show vibe. Something like that they would put in the Creep Show movie. It reminded me of that one story in Creep Show where the crate. That's what it reminded me of. If you don't know what that is, just go and find Creep Show and you'll see. It's one of the stories. It's an anthology movie done by Stephen King and George A. Romero. And one of the stories was the crate. And that's what Chauncey reminded me of in this film. But like I say, going back to what I said about Blumhouse, that's why they're so smart in their filmmaking. They're very practical. They know what they're doing budgetary-wise. And most of the time, not all the time, but most of the time it's pretty successful. Like last year's Megan. That was a surprise hit. It made bank, and it was only made for a dime. Same with this, and I hope the same for this. I'm not just saying that because I like it. I hope every movie does well, even that crappy Night Swim, even though I hated it. I don't wish no or ill will towards any filmmaker. Nobody sets out to make a bad film. That's rule number one. But anyway, getting off subject here. As for Imaginary, I really did enjoy just that aspect of it. The way that they utilized that Chauncey character. Moving on to my mixed. I do gotta say, going back to what I said about DeWanda Wise, as much as I enjoyed her performance, there was certain moments to where her dialogue, it kind of felt like a narration when she was talking. When she was doing a scene, and especially talking to the little girl, especially in the first act, there was a scene where she was saying stuff, and I'm misquoting here, but I had an imaginary friend too, and I'm sure yours is great as well. It kind of came off weird, and it kind of came off like a robotic, just kind of a weird vibe to it, and it just kind of took me out there just for a second. But, despite what I said about her performance, in the end, that, there's several moments like this, to where she was it felt like she was narrating, and she wasn't really, I don't know, it just felt weird. But the reason why this is in the mix is because the rest of the movie, other than those sprinkled in scenes, I thought her performance was really aces. And I'm not going to fault her for that. Now, before I move on, there are 4 different types of horror in my book anyway. If there's more, I apologize. But to me, there's 4 different kinds. Suspenseful, slasher, supernatural, and thriller. I always lean towards the slasher element. But I always enjoy a good supernatural if it's done right. So forgive me if the rest of this review kind of doesn't make sense. I try not to contradict myself. I try not to confuse any of y'all. But I've got my reasons. But did this blow me out of the water? Was this something that made me go, I can't wait for the next Blumhouse production. I'm just so excited. No. It did not make me do that. But it was head over heels better than that last one, than Night Swim. So with that being said, moving on to my negatives, what I can really say is, going back to what I said about how Blumhouse is one of those companies that brings out films and movies that's a hit and miss, mostly kind of a miss, but sprinkled in with some hits, is that Imaginary, yes, while it is a lot better than what Night Swim was, it did make up for a lot of what that film was. Imaginary still wasn't quite for me. Director Jeff Wadlow is one of those directors that when he does action, like Kick-Ass 2, he's awesome. And no offense against the guy, I'm sure he's got a great horror movie up his sleeve. One of these days, hopefully we'll see it. But it just seems like with horror, he kind of slips a little bit. He did it once with Truth or Dare. Truth or Dare is one of those gimmicks that, yes, it was a gimmick. And then they tried something similar with Smile later on. It seems like he does better with the action genre. It just seems like he needs a little bit more work in the horror. Now, again, I'm sure he's got a good horror movie up his sleeve. I hope to see it one of these days. But it just seems like with his directing style, it needs to be in more action than horror. He's like one of those guys that tries to juggle back and forth. To me, he doesn't seem to quite grasp horror just yet. I really wish Kick-Ass 2 would have made him enough money at the box office, which sadly it didn't. Otherwise, we would have had a Kick-Ass 3 by now. I would have really loved that and seen him come back for that one. But, it is what it is. With Imaginary, it still doesn't quite fit in my general area of horror that I praise for, that I long for, if that makes any sense. But in the end, Imaginary, compared to the last Blumhouse film, it was a lot better than I anticipated. It was fun, it was creepy, it was a happy accident. So Imaginary, what was your thoughts on this? Have you seen it yet? Are you a fan of this film? Are you a fan of Blumhouse in general? Are you one of those that really praised this one? Or are you one of those that praised Night Swim over this? Or none at all? Did you just not care? Leave me a comment down below and give me your thoughts. Thank you so much, guys, for watching this. I really do appreciate it. Like, subscribe, comment, and share. Make sure to click that bell icon so you don't miss a thing. I mean it. And I will see you on the next one. Peace.